Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful week so far. I have had one of the worst weeks actually because I experienced a flood. Yes, and it was the first time in my life that I had ever experienced a flood, and it was shocking. I actually did a post under my community posts, and you can go there and check out the video that my husband created on all the damages and everything. So that's also why I'm a bit late with an upload this week, so please forgive me for that, but it has been chaotic. But if you're new to the channel, welcome to Crime Rush. I'm Inga, and on this channel we discuss all things true crime. So if that's your thing, take a quick moment, subscribe to the channel, and if you don't mind, give it a like. It helps me out a lot. Now, today's case is really disturbing. I want you to just imagine sitting in your home, relaxing with your better half, and just enjoying the evening together, and then all of a sudden you are attacked for no reason at all. Now that's what happens in today's case. But before we dive in any deeper, I want to ask that if you are sensitive to true crime stories or any content like this, make sure to rather switch it off and take care of your mental health first. But as for the rest of you, get ready for the case of Brandy Holmes. Brandy Aileen Holmes was born on the 25th of July 1979 in Shreveport, Louisiana. Sadly, as we hear way too often, she wasn't born into the greatest environment. Her mother, Brenda, was an alcoholic. She drank every day. And in fact, Brenda didn't stop drinking when she fell pregnant with Brandy. She actually said that the first 3 months of her pregnancy, she drank whiskey, and then for the rest of her pregnancy, she drank beer. And Brenda went as far as to name her little baby girl after her favorite drink, brandy. Now that sounds like the mother of the year, right? So messed up. Now sadly, Brandy was born with fetal alcohol syndrome, which caused her to have a diminished mental capacity. From a very early age, Brandy started acting out and displaying some strange behavior. She would eat rocks and she would become extremely violent. She also had to take special education classes at school, and Brenda, her mom, just continued with her normal behavior. She was drinking every single day and she was neglecting Brandy, and she wasn't setting the best example for her. And then to make matters even worse, something really horrific happened to Brandy when she was only 12 years old. She was raped. Now, this experience, of course, traumatized Brandy, and she was institutionalized at Sand Hill Hospital in Mississippi for 6 months. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any additional information on this, and some people actually don't believe that this really happened, but this is what Brandy said happened to her. And Brandy's behavior from here on out just sort of escalates. Now, by the time that Brandy is 13 years old, she starts to really rebel. And she decides that she's not going to go to school anymore. She just drops out. She then decides to join a gang and starts committing petty crimes. This eventually escalates too, and she gets involved with more serious crimes, and then eventually is involved in a drive-by shooting, which causes her to land up in juvenile prison. From this point on, Brandy was actually in and out of juvie, and she really made a name for herself there. The wardens called her tough and really difficult to deal with. Brandy would often get into trouble for making weapons and for just being extremely violent. There was actually an incident in prison where Brandy started to argue with a fellow inmate. And then Brandy went and got acid and threw it on the other inmate's face. Yes, you heard that right. She threw acid on her face. Now, I have questions about this. First of all, where did she get the acid? I mean, I know I've heard of people, sneaking things into prison, but this is the first time I've heard of acid. Could it be that the acid was perhaps there for another purpose already in the prison and she just happened to get her hands on it? I don't know. Let me know if you have a better take on that. It was difficult to find out exactly when Brandy was released from prison, but we know for sure that she was a free woman by 2002 when she was 23 years old. And it is in the same year that she would meet a man by the name of Robert Glenn Coleman. He was 33 years old at the time, which is 10 years her senior. Now, this relationship between Brandy and Robert became serious very quickly. She was completely committed to Robert and she saw him as her ride or die. The two of them fell madly in love, and it is at this point that you would hope that Brandy would settle down, get married, have some kids, something like that. Nope, no such luck, because Robert had his own demons. There's not a lot of information on Robert out there, but what I found on him, it's not good. Let's just say this is not a great person, okay? By the time he entered into a relationship with Brandy, he already had a long list of crimes under his belt. These two just brought out the worst in each other, and they would often discuss committing crimes together and ending lives of other people together. I mean, that's just messed up. Who does that? And sadly, in 2003, they would turn these discussions and fantasies into a reality. You see, Brandy would often visit a graveyard, and some reports claim that she was actually visiting the grave of a friend, while others stated that she would just hang out there. But whatever the case, this is where she comes across the Brandon couple's home. The Brandon couple's home was right next to the graveyard. The elderly couple who lived in this home were retired pastor Julian Brandon, who was 70 years old, and his 68-year-old wife, Alice Brandon. The Brandon couple were about to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, and they were just loved by all who knew them. They were known as a God-fearing couple, and they dedicated their lives to helping anyone they could that was in need. In fact, they would go so far in helping people that they sometimes went without themselves. But Brandy didn't care about any of this. In fact, she didn't even know them. She knew nothing about them. All she knew was that this couple looked so vulnerable to her and that they would be an easy target for her and Robert. On the 1st of January 2003, Julian and Alice Brandon were just relaxing inside their home, just watching television, when all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. Julian got up, and when he answered the door, that's when Robert and Brandy forced their way in. And as soon as they were inside, Robert shot Julian at near contact range in the underside of his jaw. The bullet separated into two pieces. The one fragment went through Julian's brain. The second one exited the top of his head, and poor Julian collapsed immediately. Robert and Brandy then grabbed Alice and forced her to a bedroom that was at the back of her home. That is where they demanded all her valuables from her while she begged and pleaded for her life. Once they got what they wanted from her, they placed a pillow over her face and they shot her in the head. As they were leaving the bedroom, they heard that Julian was still alive. And this is when this evil couple decides to go to the kitchen and grab a bunch of knives. And they go to Julian and they slashed him all over, in his face, in his neck, in his chest, in his back. And if that wasn't enough, they proceeded to slash his throat several times. On the 5th of January 2003, 4 days after the Brandon couple were attacked in their home, a friend of theirs from church became extremely concerned when they didn't show up to church. His name was Calvin Barrett Hudson. Calvin knew that the Brandon couple always came to church. I mean, Julian and Alice were always at church, and on the rare occasion that they didn't come to church, they would always let someone know. So he knew something was up. So he decided to take his wife and to go to the Brandon couple's home just to check up on them. And that's when he found poor Julian's lifeless body lying on the floor. They immediately phoned the police, and as soon as the police arrived to the home, they saw Julian on the floor deceased, but they were amazed to find Alice still clinging to life. She was still alive. She had been clinging to life for 4 days at this point after she was so brutally attacked. A medical helicopter transported Alice to a hospital, and she actually survived this horrible attack. But unfortunately, she was disabled afterwards and she needed around-the-clock care. Now, in the meantime, Brandy and Robert weren't exactly keeping this a secret. They were bragging to people about it and even trying to sell off Alice's jewelry to anyone they came across. Not the brightest of criminals, I would say. I mean, I do understand that Brandy had a low IQ and fetal alcohol syndrome, but one would think that Robert would take the initiative to sort of jump in here and take the lead on the thinking, but no, he didn't. So it doesn't really feel like the two of them really planned on getting away with this at all. Soon the police televised this horrific crime to inform the public, and that's when they received a tip. The caller told the police about Brandy and Robert bragging about this crime and even trying to sell Alice's jewelry. So police immediately tracked down Brandy's mother, Brenda, and they went to her trailer. And that's where they would find Brandy, Robert, her mom, Brenda, and also her 15-year-old brother, Sean. And all four of them agreed to go to the station for questioning. Now, it didn't take much for Brandy to crack under the pressure. Over the next 2 days, she gave 6 recorded and unrecorded statements, admitting to all the crimes that took place at the Brandon couple's home. In her first statement, she denied that Robert had anything to do with it, but from her second statement and onwards, she implicated him in the murders. She actually went on to explain to police that she went back to the scene of the crime 2 days after it happened, and she took her 2 nephews with her, the youngest one being only 9 years old at the time. One of her nephews waited outside while the 9-year-old actually went inside with her, where he saw Julian's body and everything. And she said when they were inside, they could hear Alice's breathing. And when she was asked why she did this, she said because she had had a dream that Alice was still alive. Now, when this little 9-year-old nephew of hers saw the body, he immediately ran out. And that's when the 2 little nephews got on their bicycles and they left the scene. This story was actually corroborated by a neighbor who saw the 2 boys fleeing on their bicycles. Brandy stated that she stayed in the home a little while longer, listening to Alice breathing, and then decided to do nothing about it and just left. I mean, the whole thing is just sick to me, because why take the nephews with? I mean, how traumatic is that not for a child to see? And also thinking, on the other hand, it's also extremely risky to go back to the scene of the crime, especially if you are not the brightest criminal. But then Brandy gave police additional information that they were not expecting at all. She confessed that only 4 days after they attacked the Brandon couple, they actually went and attacked another person. His name was Terrence Blaze, and he was only 25 years old, and he was a good friend to Robert. Apparently, they picked him up, and while they were driving, Terrence was sitting in the passenger seat while Robert was driving, and Brandy was in the back, and she came from behind, and she shot Terrence in the head. Sadly, Terrence passed away immediately. Now, after Brandy confessed this to police, they were absolutely stunned, of course, and she led them to Terrence's body so they could inform his family and they could lay him to rest. Both Brandy and Robert were found guilty of both crimes and both were sentenced to death. In August of 2016, Brandy's death sentence was vacated and she was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She is currently incarcerated at St. Gabriel Women's Prison. Robert Coleman's death sentence was also reversed and he was also resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, I know there was a lot of debate on whether Brandy was even fit to stand trial because of her very low IQ and also the fetal alcohol syndrome. And at this point, I'm just going to tell you how I feel about this case. First of all, if you are pregnant, don't drink or do illegal substances. It is so unfair for you to do that to your unborn child. And if you do have a problem and you need help, make sure to get that help. There are facilities right around the world that will definitely help you and your unborn baby. And this is what happened to Brandy. This is how she was born, because her mother decided to drink while she was pregnant. And then she also entered a dysfunctional home to just top it all off. And I'm really sorry that this happened to her, but we can't change it. But it doesn't mean that it's okay for her to commit these crimes. Definitely not. I also think it's important to mention that authorities were aware that this girl was a danger to society since she was really young, okay? And she was in and out of the juvenile system, from teenage years. And then they go and release her into the same environment they took her out of, and they expect a different outcome. I just feel like there needs to be a better system, and I don't know how many times we have to hear about cases like this before something needs to change, and become better, because at this point I feel like they are just playing with lives. I think I'm quite okay with the fact that they reversed her death penalty, because I feel like she has valid mitigating circumstances with her low IQ, the fetal alcohol syndrome, and just the environment that she grew up in. Not so much for Robert, but I do have peace knowing that he will also be behind bars for the rest of his life, because these two people must never, ever be free. They are a danger to society. Today's only surviving victim, Alice Brandon, eventually passed away in 2008 from natural causes. Against all odds, she survived this horrific attack and lived a few more years. My heart goes out to the sweet Brandon couple's family members and friends. It sounds like they were incredible people and they didn't deserve what happened to them. My heart also goes out to Terrence Blazer's loved ones. His life was stolen at a young age and in such a senseless and cruel way. May he rest in peace. But I think that's a wrap for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Please let me know what you thought of this case. Do you think that they were too lenient? Do you think they should not have reversed the death sentences? Or do you feel that they should have been a bit more lenient with Brandy, considering her background and everything she went through? And what do you think about Robert? I look forward to you reading all about it in the comment section. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, make sure you stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.